Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Google Solve for X information session. My name is Konstantin. I'm a PhD student in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department, and I'll be your MC for today. So today is a very important day for our university. The School of Engineering has been collaborating with Google in order to bring to our campus a very prestigious competition. This competition is called Solve for X, and today we're very honored to have two representatives from Google to explain the concept to us and answer all our questions, give us all the details. Before we do all this, I would like to ask you to set your mobile phones to silent mode, please. Thank you. And I think we can, before we say everything else, I would like to ask you to join me in welcoming the Dean of Engineering to give his welcoming speech, Professor Khaled Ben Letayeb.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm really very pleased to see so many of you here. This is really something, in our view, something very important. We're trying to join hands with Google to think of and come up with, I think this is actually says it all, what they say about Google X or Solve for X, really trying to look into global challenges, really looking into some type of non-traditional technologies or that can bring about some type of revolutions and solve some of the problems that are facing humanities and the world. So this is something that has started with Google, and they have a lot of activities going on. And the idea came about that we can join hands. They are already joining hands with some universities and organizations. And the idea came about that they would like to have a great universities, that's as we can say, in this part of the world, that they can work together, hopefully, and see how we can push forward with these ideas. So some time ago, we had a meeting, actually, between HKUST representative and Google, and that was all the key people from UST, from the provost, the vice presidents, and so on, and president, and so on. And we thought about how we can move this as a whole for HKUST. So as you can see, to solve any of these challenges, they have to involve some type of interdiscipline collaboration. It cannot just be engineering, it cannot just be science, it just cannot be business. And so we would like somehow to bring about all the good stuff that is happening at HKUST. And we have so many brains sitting here and outside, somehow students, staff, and faculty, that perhaps that we can come up with some challenges that we can put forward, as is going to be explained later on. And I think this is going to be very exciting, and the fact that we have so many of you here, I think tells me a lot. So probably I think the most important thing is later on is to listen to what the representative of Google that they're going to tell you about, and I look forward to listening to it. I think when I've heard about it the first time, I was extremely excited. And we wanted to follow up. And again, I want to emphasize, we would like this to be really open to all of HKUST. This is very, very critical for us to make a difference. So with that in mind, I think you're not here to listen to me. I think you're I have nothing really that as interesting as what you're going to hear later on. But on behalf of HKUST, I really would like to thank the representative of Google to be here. They are very busy, and at least one of them I know that been traveling on the road for a long, long time. They say UST is University of Science and Technology. Sometimes I think we have something to share with Google. I would maybe say, we always say University of Stress and Tension. I think Google also must be known for stress and tension. Anyway, but I think they are very for innovation, and I think UST is also known for innovation of excellence. So I think this is a perfect team. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank you for being here. I'd like to thank the organizers. I think the School of Engineering team under the leadership of our Associate Dean have actually played a major role to organize this. So really, I would like to thank you. And please, please let's join me in welcoming the Google, I think, before we move to the next, but I think let me join the Google representative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. So, what exactly is Solve for X? If we don't know, we can just Google it, right? So that's the thing. Google is so huge these days. So it has become a word in the English dictionary. Every time we don't know about something, we can just Google and find the answer. But today, thankfully, we don't have to Google for Solve for X because we're happy enough to have the speakers from Google to come and explain the whole concept and maybe share with us some of their experience from the previous competition. So I would like to invite our guests, Miss Deborah Lai and Miss Puneet Ahira. Miss Ahira is the program director for Solve for X, and she's identifying and working with individuals and organizations working on technology moonshots, and she's using the power of Google to accelerate their progress. And Ms. Lai is identifying and working with strategic organizations in order to, in the region, in Asia, in order to inspire and source the technology moonshot. So please welcome, join me in welcoming our speakers.
Thank you guys so much for coming this morning. I actually have to start off with an apology because my voice has gone over the last couple of weeks traveling around and doing this. So I'm going to try and get through some of these slides, and Deborah's going to help me if I run into trouble. So we're here to talk to you about Solve for X. And Solve for X is a tech platform that was started at Google X. And at Google X, we've been given the mandate to look at and understand the world's biggest problems and come up with ways to solve them. And really, this is a poetic reference to the original Moonshot, where President Kennedy, some of you may be familiar with this speech, said, you know, we're going to do this not because it's easy, but because it's difficult, because there are things that we don't know how to do today. We need to invent metal alloys. And the second part of this quote, maybe you haven't heard, but it's quite powerful, where he says, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, and because that challenge is one we're willing to accept and unwilling to postpone. So I wanted to show you a quick video to really sort of set the scene of where this is all coming from.
The actual moonshot is wonderful, inspirational, poetic, beautiful, involved great technical challenges, genuine heroism. It brought the world together. But think about the Polynesian islander on the dugout canoe, deciding one day they were going to go that way. No one had ever been that way before. No one even knew if there was anything that way before. It was amazing, and it changed the world.
People can set their minds to magical, seemingly impossible ideas, and then through science and technology bring them to reality. And that then sets other people on fire, that other things that look impossible might be accomplishable.
Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there.
Everyone else in the world is working on the next 10%. If you can be the one that delivers that 10 times improvement, you have a chance to really change things.
If you want cars to run at 50 miles per gallon, fine, you can retool your car a little bit. But if I tell you it has to run on a gallon of gas for 500 miles, you have to start over.
You need a lot of courage in this work, and you need a lot of persistence. Even if you don't really 100% believe it's possible, like you might think this might be possible, have the courage to try. That's how the greatest things have happened.
You don't spend your time being bothered that you can't teleport from here to Japan, because there's a part of you that thinks it's impossible. Moonshot thinking is choosing to be bothered by that.
We they choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Humanity's progress has been a series of amazing, audacious things, from the very small and personal up to the great, big, and grand, and we are a species of moonshots. And to me, that's like the really amazing, poetic, and inspirational thing.
When you find your passion, you're unstoppable. You can make amazing things happen. It's been true through all of history.
When Kennedy said that we would put a man on the moon, it's about the fact that he said, we don't know how to do this yet, and we're gonna do it anyway. And that sends chills up everybody's spine. Because if that happens, what couldn't we do?
So the three people you saw there in the video, Ashtar Teller is what we call the captain of Moonshots. He's the head of Google X. Rich Duvall is part of our rapid evaluation team that vets new projects. And Megan Smith is a VP at Google X and is an executive sponsor of the Solve for X program. So you might think that all sounds really cool, but practically, how do you go about picking which projects to pursue at Google X? And there's actually a very strict formula that we follow. So all of the projects that go through our vetting selection have to address a huge problem on the scale of millions, if not billions of people. So it can't just be something that's relevant for a handful or a small pocket of individuals. It has to be something that has the potential to really be world-changing. There has to be some kind of breakthrough, radical new perspective, approach, or solution, or product that is applied that could potentially solve that problem. It might sound like science fiction today, but there is also a breakthrough science or technology that gives us the confidence that this moonshot will actually be possible. And what we find is a lot of the moonshot pioneers that we are working with, and that, you know, when we're even pursuing these projects, they're working in process. So just to give you a few examples of some of the Google X moonshot projects, this is the self-driving car project. So we've run 700,000 miles of autonomous driving, mostly throughout the west coast of the US. And what you're seeing here is a prototype vehicle. This vehicle has no steering wheel, it has no gas pedal, it has no brake pedal. So you sit in the car and it moves and it gets you to your destination without you being able to control anything. This is Project Loop. This is two out of 3 people in the world don't have access to the internet. We know the internet is a key scaling factor for people to continue on an economic path of development. And so Loon is the opportunity to connect all of these people in a way that's possible in the immediate term without having to lay cables and fiber. All of that needs to happen as well, but this can be an intermediate solution to leapfrog that necessity. The way this works is it's a mesh network of balloons that sail on the air current. So you have ships that sail the ocean. These sail different air currents around the world. They tend to go in a particular latitude. So we launched in New Zealand. The reason why we launched in New Zealand is because the only other country around the circumference of the Earth that hits that latitude is Argentina and Chile. So it's easier to get regulatory approval and to have this prototype start. And we've also done test projects in Brazil. Most of you are familiar with Google Glass. So here we're very conscious of the fact that this is the tip of the iceberg for what is going to become the wearable technology market. And what's really interesting here is to see the applications of how this technology is already being used. Here you see an example of a surgeon who, through Google Hangouts on Glass, is able to give a first-hand perspective to his colleagues who are able to then, through the earpiece, then respond to what it is that they're seeing through his perspective. Glass is also a really nice example of this idea of fast iteration, fast prototyping, not spending so much time getting bogged down into the details. So I just want to ask, how long do you guys think it took to create the initial prototype for Google Glass? More more than 6 months? Can I see a show of hands? 3 months? Any guesses? It took 90 minutes. So it was in 1 hour and a half to come up with the initial prototype for Google Glass. It was a phone strapped on to a pair of glasses. And in that initial year, they had a new prototype, a new iteration of Glass every month for that first year. Makani, this is probably less familiar to a lot of people. This is our airborne wind turbines. So onshore wind turbines typically they take on the order of 100 tons of concrete, steel, and fiberglass. And in order for that capital cost to be economic, you need speeds of between 20 to 28 kilometers per hour. Only 15% of the world's landmass actually has wind speeds at that level. The idea with Makani is, what if you could create essentially these kites up in the air where the electricity is tethered back down on a wire? And this eliminates 90% of the materials and 50% of the cost, and doubles the amount of land that could be available for wind harvesting. This is Project Iris. So this was announced earlier this year. This is our contact lens that monitors glucose levels through your tears. So 1 out of 19 people on the planet today are diabetic. That number keeps on increasing. This is the step in the right direction. Instead of these individuals having to prick their finger on an hourly basis to test a drop of blood, they can have that monitoring happening automatically and be able to take the proper measures that are necessary. And this is, again, just one step in a direction that's going to really disrupt how things are working today. But what's interesting for us is that in some ways, it's the people who matter more than the actual projects. These founders, these individuals are the ones who make all of this possible. So here you see Astra and Rich, Larry and Sergey and Eric. And we really believe that if you bring together the right group of people who dare to believe in the impossible, who have that kind of audacious spirit, that are willing to take on these challenges, you can do anything. And we know we're not the only crazy ones. So I just shared with you a handful of projects, but we can only work on so many. We're a couple of hundred of us sitting in Mountain View. And we know that throughout all of history, people have been working on these really big, audacious ideas, and they continue to do so today. And so the idea with Solve4X is to really create this platform where we can build a community of individuals and organizations who have this kind of ethic, who have this kind of spirit to want to not work on a 10% incremental change, but the 10x change that's really going to be disruptive. So what I'm going to do is show you another short video to explain a little bit more about what Solve4X is. All of the people that you see who are featured in the video were individuals who we went out and found. None of them work at Google. All of them are working on their projects all over the world, whether it be from Tel Aviv to Kazakhstan to in parts of Africa. So just to give you a sense of the type of projects that we're looking to curate and then to really accelerate and help. And then after that, I'm going to hand over to Debbie, who's going to take you through the rest of the presentation.
I happened to meet the people who run this part of Google called Google X, which is the part of Google that's supposed to design like incredible new things that would change the world, which they call Moonshot. That's their in-house word for that. They said like, oh, we're having this conference. It's like basically 70 inventors, geniuses, investors trying to decide how best to save the world. Do you want to be the opening speaker? And my first reaction was like, no, like what in the world would I have to say to people like that?
You can take all 270,000 metric tons of spent nuclear fuel that exists worldwide and turn it into enough electricity to power the entire world for 72 years.
We can produce conventional liquid hydrocarbon fuels from atmospheric air.
We're looking at an aircraft that will carry 500 tons, much larger than any other flying device.
It's totally comic book, Like, let's assemble the Avengers on the flying aircraft carrier.
Instead of carrying all the energy on board of the vehicle, we are delivering energy in the form of a microwave beam to the vehicle as it ascends.
We started with a magnet that was an insulator. We applied pressure on it, and it dramatically transformed into a superconductor. This is almost a form of quantum alchemy.
Instead of doing surgery, what if we would just take a drop of saline solution that has tiny little nanorobots that, through DNA encoding, know what to look for in your body and know how to cut it out and move it to somewhere else and destroy it. And then you find out, like, oh, actually, we're kind of doing this right now in animals.
Buildings consume about 40% of the energy that's produced in this country. About 2/3 of that is used for heating, refrigeration, air conditioning, those kind of things.
And so what can building design learn from nature? You can custom design the pores of a moth to be sticky, preferentially to certain gas molecules over others. This makes moths perfect not just for storing gases, but also for separating them.
You can build a device, you can implant it for a long term, and you can transfer electrical signals that are perceived by the brain as visual information.
We're capitalizing on the nanomaterials effect and the architectural effect to create materials that are both lightweight and strong.
For a bunch of people who are actually successful, it's weirdly kumbaya-ish.
African food scientists said, fix these 100 crops and you'll go a long way towards fixing the rural sector of Africa.
The average lifespan of a refugee camp today is up to 20 years. Those people are not passive victims, they are active inventors. So let's invent with them.
Decoy stands for virus decoy. If you had a mouse in your house, you would use a mouse trap. We're creating virus traps.
We live in a time where I feel like you don't have a sense of there's a problem out there, let's fix it. Like that's the thing I'm getting here that I haven't ever gotten in such a concentrated way anywhere. I agree with that spirit now that I've seen it, you know, and I know there's still more of it in the world.
Great. So hopefully that video gave you all a sense of the sorts of technologies that we are working with and that we are actively looking for. So I have a question. How many of you in this room are working on technologies that you think are comparable to what you've just seen? Really? Yeah? Can you tell me a little bit about yours?
Well, I've been working on facial recognition for many years, which can be applied to Google Glass.
That's great. That's great. And I know that, and what was your name?
Chanky.
Sorry?
Chanky.
Chanky? Okay. Well, I'm sure that Chanky is one of the brave ones in the room, but there are probably many more of you who are working on equally exciting projects and technologies. And so what I want to show you here is that Solve for X is really something that's a collaboration between Google X and all of our partners. And our partners include MIT Tech Review, Singularity University, TED, Singapore's Agency for Science, Technology, and Research, and of course, HKUST. And why do we look for partners? We look for partners for a couple of reasons. One is we're looking for partners who can help us discover these exciting technologies. So HKUST, we think, is a great hub for people working on things like this, for all of you. So that's one thing. Second is we look for partners who can help us accelerate these moonshots. And acceleration can involve a couple of different ways. It can be financial, it can be scientific. How can we create a cross-cultural, global, international exchange of ideas so that people working on similar problems can help each other? It can be regulatory. So one of the technologies that you guys saw up there was using nuclear waste to power an electricity generator. So that scientist actually has no problem with funding. What she needed help with was actually more in the policy and regulatory space. So how can we connect her with the people who can help her there? And Solve for X was able to connect her with the Secretary of the Department of Energy in the US, who's now able to help her better navigate that and bring her technology to more people in the world. And finally, we want to work with different partners to inspire people to do moonshots and to think about moonshots. Right now, we think that there are a lot of brilliant minds out there in this very room who have the capacity to tackle some of the world's biggest problems, whether that's energy, whether that's in health, whether that's in education or outer space. We want to get you all to start thinking about how you can use your brains and even your current research and take that research out of the ivory tower and apply it to real world problems. That's why we work with partners, and that's why we're here today with HKUST. So, as I mentioned before, what we'd like to accomplish is to break the geographic and knowledge silos. One thing that's really important to us is to connect people from all over the world. So Solve4X is 3 years old now. We have between 200 to 300 technologies that are on the Solve4X platform. And up till the beginning of this year, there wasn't a single one from Asia. Now, my family's from Asia, so that makes me very sad. And I think it is a lie if anyone says that there's nothing in Asia that meets the Solve4X standards and that doesn't have the potential to change the world in the way we're looking for. And what we really want to do this year, having come to Asia, we've been in a lot of different countries. We were in Seoul on Monday, Beijing on Tuesday, Shenzhen yesterday. We're here today, and Taipei tomorrow. We want to be able to access and discover all of the amazing technologies that are here. And then we want to be able to bring you onto this international platform, give you the visibility, give you the support from all around the world that you need to make your moonshot happen. We want to connect people from all around the world to collaborate on these technologies, to work together to solve these big problems, and then to make these solutions actually happen. So that's what we're looking to do. And honestly, half the battle is won in telling a good story. What does that mean? What we found is that there's a lot of people working on, as we mentioned, great research, cutting edge technology. But that's all useless if you don't know how to, one, apply it to these big problems, and two, be able to tell your story, talk about what you're working on in a compelling way that people can understand. And so that way they can then give you the help or give you the support that you need. And so this is something that we want to help you do. If you are working on something really exciting, how can we help you tell that story to a global audience, which will then help you get all that support that you need? As you saw in that video, there are a lot of scientists there talking about their technologies, and hopefully you guys were able to understand some of what they're saying. That's a process that we work with them on. We help them to be able to articulate their technology, which is sometimes very complex, very technical, in a way that people can understand and find exciting. We also want to help diverse minds come up with better answers. So a lot of the times what we've been able to do is we found someone who's working on a really exciting technology, and they're doing great, but actually bringing them onto this global platform, bringing them onto Solve4X, has helped them connect with other people working on similar problems, and that collaboration has actually helped them find even better ways of addressing the problem they're looking at. And something that we actually do at Google X and that we want to encourage elsewhere is what we call yes and. And this is the idea that we're not afraid to fail. A lot of the times when new projects come up, the first response is to say, yes, but what about this? But what about that? So DARPA, I don't know how many of you are familiar with DARPA, which is a top research organization in the US. This is something that they encountered a lot, right? When a new proposal comes up, say you're in a classroom or you're with your friends and you come up with something that sounds crazy, this idea to have a car that can drive itself, to give people internet access through balloons floating all around in the sky. The first response is, yes, but I don't think that'll work. What about this problem? What about that problem? At Google X, one thing that's really important in the culture is actually to say yes and. Yes, and what about this? And have you tried that? Something that's constructive and that encourages us to try new things and to think big without fear of failure. Because failure is okay, and multiple iterations is okay. The first idea that you come up with might not work, and that's completely fine, because that just is one step towards the bigger goal that you have. And every step takes you closer, even if you have to fall down 10, 100, 1,000 times beforehand. And finally, we also want to lift up the world's moonshot pioneers. And this is something that I want to iterate. We think that there are a lot of moonshots all over the world. How do we lift them up? How do we give them the visibility and the support, financial, regulatory, scientific, that they need? How do we accelerate these breakthrough technologies? So if I can sum up what we're trying to accomplish with SolveForX, very simply, we're trying to inspire, we're trying to discover, and we're trying to accelerate moonshots all over the world. So just an example of one way that's happened is, how many of you are familiar with the BGI? Yep. Beijing Genomics Institute. So the Beijing Genomics Institute is actually supporting one of the technologies that you might have seen in the video before. Howard Shapiro is working on a genome sequencing project for orphan crops in Africa. And the BGI, which is, as I mentioned, Beijing Genomics Institute, is now helping him with that project. This is something that Howard Shapiro was working on in Africa. And the Beijing Genomics Institute, obviously in China, realized that there was room for collaboration. That's one example of the way that we'd like to bring people together to work on tackling problems that affect everyone in the world. And this is a project that could have a lot of different applications, whether that's ending stunting and malnutrition in Africa, whether that's addressing the high prevalence of birth defects in China. There are so many applications for this, and it's such a massive, massive project that it really does require people working together from all these different spaces. This is another project in which we've actually had collaboration between our Chinese partners and one of our technologists on the platform. But I'm just going to skip over that because I don't know the details too much. So as I mentioned, SolveForX is also a network. It's a network of networks around moonshots. That's the unifying theme. It's also a very high standard network. So we mentioned before that there are 200 to 300 projects, technologies that are currently on the SolveForX platform. Each one of those was selected with the same standards that we would apply to any project within Google X. So the ones you saw, the self-driving car, Project Loon, Project Iris. Those are all projects that go through a lot of scrutiny and a lot of observation before we decide that these are projects we want to pursue. And the same goes for technology submissions that come to SolveForX. We want to make sure, one, that it really is a moonshot, so that it meets those 3 criteria that we talked about earlier. It solves a big problem, it has a radical solution, and there's a breakthrough technology. And second is, we do want to make sure that it's actually feasible. So a lot of these are borderline science fiction. We're interested in the ones that aren't actually science fiction. These have to be real. But it's a very, very special community of people that we're trying to build, of people who are thinking big, people who are working on really amazing technologies, and people who want to solve these problems with those technologies. So we'd like to invite you all to join us. As your professor said, we think that there are amazing minds here, and we would love to see you all contributing and joining the SolveForX platform. And now I know that you probably all have a lot of questions, because SolveForX is a very new concept. It's never been done before, really. And so there's probably a lot of questions that you have around what exactly it is and how you can be a part of it. So I want to make this as interactive as a conversation as possible. So without further ado, I know that you might be a little bit shy, but if you can just raise your hands and let me know what questions you have, I am happy to answer them for the next 20 to 30 minutes. Come on. Yep, in the front row, black t-shirt. Maybe we can get him a microphone so everyone can hear his question.
I'm going to ask about this simple question. So, can we, the freshmen, or new students, who is trying to got nothing, actually join this SolveForX and maybe do something to contribute in those SolveForX, and how can we do that? I mean, how to apply all of it?
So that's a great question. We don't care about your age. We don't care about your qualifications. If you have a moonshot that meets our criteria, then you should be on the SolveForX platform. Now, I do want to be clear that you need to have an actual moonshot, right? And so you mentioned how you can contribute. If you are working on a moonshot that you think should be part of SolveForX, then we would encourage you to submit it. And I know that HKUST, they're working on a process to have that submission coming into us. So that's how you can contribute. Another way is you can start thinking about a moonshot. So you're a freshman right now. I don't know, I'm guessing you're in the School of Engineering, is that correct? Yeah, so start thinking about moonshots, right? Don't just tackle 10% changes. Think about how you can change things 10 times or 100 times. And I do want to be clear, right now there's a lot of hype, a lot of buzz around startups. How can I make a company and sell it for $1 million within the next few months? Moonshots take time, right? To create a nuclear reactor that can generate electricity to power the world for the next 70 years, that's not going to happen in 1 year. This is research that they've been working on for a while. It's going to take several years, maybe even 10 years to realize that. Okay, so I want to emphasize that these are big-scale projects. These will take time. And it could take you the next 4 years of school to work on it, or you could have something right now that you think is a moonshot. Either way, you can contribute to the SolveForX platform.
Sorry, you have to bear with my voice. Also, we were at the IEEE, the Triennial Sections Congress, and we got a similar question to the one you just asked. I think there are other ways to be part of this community, even if you're not a moonshot pioneer. Everybody needs to come together in order to really see these things happen in the world. And so for this particular group of people in the IEEE network, we had asked them that there are 3 ways we thought they could really get involved and help us. One is organizing their own SolveForX event. So it may be that you know people who are working on stuff, or you want to research, or you want to find out individuals who you think are pursuing really big tech projects. You could organize an event, and we can help you to do that in order to give those people a platform, give them a stage, and in the process, become much more familiar with what's going on in a particular industry or field. You can also join some of the events that might be happening in this region as an attendee. So we have a 2-hour workshop format where for 10 minutes, each of our 3 moonshot pioneers gets up, gives their proposal, and then we spend the rest of the time doing interactive small group brainstorming to actually progress the idea forward in that room. So flipping the conference format on its head, instead of just having people talking at you, taking all of the talent in the room to really do something immediately that has tremendous impact. And then the third area is to convene this tech workshop working group. So if there is a moonshot or a project that you think is really incredible and you want to help, thinking about ways in which you might be able to apply your talents to push that idea forward. And if you do click on any of these, this is actually on our website, you'll go into more information about what's actually involved. So here it gives you sort of the longer format of just to get you started on what this stuff would actually include.
Does that answer your question? Yes, thank you. And by the way, as Puneet mentioned, we would love to see you guys hosting your own events and supporting moonshots through them. So if you're interested in that, right afterward, you can also come and talk to us with it. Yep, in the white shirt. And by the way, before you ask questions, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your name, and what department you're in, what year you are, what you're interested in?
First of all, it was a really inspirational talk, so thank you so much, and the videos were really amazing. And my name is Pallav, and I'm from electronics. So I wish to know that, if there is a great modification in one of your projects, so will that be considered a new moonshot or what? Thank you.
Yes, so if the idea is novel enough and interesting enough, we can definitely consider it to be a new tech moonshot. I think particularly in places, we were in Africa recently, so we did a trip to Dakar in Senegal, Lagos in Nigeria, Abuja, Nairobi, and Kampala. And what's really interesting there is you have some of the toughest problems happening on the ground and people living through them. And really what the innovations that they come up with is an interesting application or reapplication of an existing technology in a way nobody would have thought would have been possible. And in those cases, because they have so much potential to have immediate impact on an enormous scale, that's so interesting to us because we want to see positive change actually happen. So for us, the conclusion, the impact is the most important thing.
Thank you.
My name is Tim. I'm an alumni and I work in Dow Jones now. I would like to know, how is this different than Kickstarter?
So I was warned of this question before, so thank you very much. I think the way to think about Solve for X, how is it different than TED? How is it different from Kickstarter? How is it different from a VC? One, we deal exclusively in what we're calling tech moonshots. So if a project doesn't address a problem on the scale of millions, billions of people, with a radical new idea that leverages breakthrough science or technology, that's not part of this platform. You can go to Kickstarter, you can go anywhere else. Like, we're partners with all of them, we love them, but it's not something that we're working on or that we're interested in. So by having that really high criteria, it helps us eliminate the noise. And that noise is what's a really great value. The elimination of that noise is a really great value proposition for the people who we think have the resources and the interest to help. So if you're a VC like Mark Andreessen or Vinod Khosla that's looking to invest in really breakthrough technologies in moonshots, coming to one place where everything you see is of this caliber, of this scale, is a really efficient means by which to decide what you want to add to your portfolio. It also means that we can aggregate some of the challenges that exist, the lack of infrastructure, the lack of an ecosystem for high-risk investment, high-risk projects. So, I mean, it's really, we are, this is a niche, and that's the space that we're playing in.
Hi, my name is Ashish and I'm a freshman from School of Science. So I wanted to know, like, what's the role of sustainability in this project? Like, is sustainability a criteria when you look at the projects, or is it just a radical thing about it?
Talking about economic or environmental sustainability?
I think it pertains to both. Like, if you look at the Google Glass, it's got nothing to do about sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about things like the one in Africa and all that, it actually, like, thinks about the future and how we can sustain the future generations. So is there any criteria regarding sustainability, or like how is sustainability involved in this program?
I guess I'm still trying to understand what you mean by sustainability. If you mean impact on the future and the project's ability to have sort of long-term effect, then certainly that's something that we look at. If you're talking about environmental sustainability, then there are a lot of projects around that, for example, in the energy space, but that's just one of the spaces that we play in.
I understand your point. I think the way to think about Google Glass is the beginning of where that industry is going to be moving, right? And so the problem that they're trying to solve there is, oftentimes, no matter, I've had the privilege to travel quite a lot, no matter what city you go to, you always see people who are walking around like this, who are bumping into you or bumping into other people. And that's a problem. Our society is moving in a direction where people are not actually mentally present in their environment. And I think, this is kind of a step in a direction to solve this very kind of subtle thing that is a disaster waiting to happen. Glass may not be the exact execution of what that's going to end up looking like, but it's a step in that direction. And so really why we're excited about that is because it's moving the whole industry ahead. Similar to self-driving car, it's not that we want to become a car manufacturer. It's that we want to change the way the industry is thinking about transport, about vehicle manufacturing, about the things that are important, and then to adopt that kind of forward-looking mindset. So I think to address your question, yes, we are considering sustainability, and even though it may not be obvious, those are deeply embedded in those projects as well.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm a physics PhD student, and I'm wondering about the submission process. My area of research has to do with eradicating viruses using a physical means rather than chemical, by affecting the structure using electromagnetic waves. I think it might be a potential moonshot type project.
Yeah, absolutely, it sounds like it could be. So I defer that to to the faculty here, to Cami, who I think is, this is the first time we've worked with a university to actually put on a competition. So this is unprecedented for us in terms of actually using this kind of format to aggregate and pull all of this together. So we're relying on the leadership here to figure out what that process looks like, how to make it as efficient and easy for you as possible. Separately, we've shown up, so now you know us, which makes things easier. You have our email addresses you can reach out to. There's also solve4x@google.com, which goes to our whole team. So you can reach out that way. On the website, there is a submission process here where you can upload a video if you have a video. I think it's probably better to also make a point of contact as well to make sure it gets through the system.
Maybe I'll just answer that question. Actually, this is also new to us, and I think we've been excited about it when we heard about it. I think one way is, what I understand, if you have a great idea, you can also make a video and so on, and you can submit it directly. What we are trying to do at HKUST, and that's why we're trying to be a partner, that we can actually work with Google, and somehow we are thinking of a process. We need to come up with a process that will facilitate to our staff, students, alums, whatever, how HKUST can help, maybe bring a network, some actually help you bring an idea out. And we're thinking of multiple ways of doing it. Maybe one way is maybe to publicize this, we can have some type of competitions. People can have an idea, then we can have the faculty work, and then maybe the best 5 or 3 and the winners and so on. Google will be involved in that selection and so on. And then those 3 will automatically somehow be submitted for Google to think. So we're trying to think of many ways. And I think the purpose of this is for us really is to gauge the interest of the community here. And I think I'm so excited to see so many of you here. And if you have any idea how HKUST can help to facilitate this process, please let us know. I think that's the purpose of today's meeting.
Absolutely. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. It's really hard. We get a lot of people coming at us, and sometimes they say, "We've got this great idea. Cool, can you do it?" And I'm like, "No, we want you to do it." So the more help we can get from partners to lift up the best quality, the highest quality projects that have the most potential, the easier it is for us to act on them quicker.
My Elmon Guan alumni, also heavy Google user every day. Actually, my question is, I think, thank you for the talk. It's very inspiring, and not only every tech shot is actually very inspiring. But I want to point out the fact that I think what you guys are doing is like finding, inspiring, and actually building the culture for Moonshot is actually equally inspiring. So actually my question is not technical at all. I would like to ask you to share your experience on, from your journey, from your work, any experience on how to build the conditions for Moonshot to occur. For example, in an organization or in an individual, what kind of mindset will make myself become able to own a Moonshot project, most likely? So for organization, the conditions, and the person, the mindset. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. It's a new title. Maybe people will use that as a title, Google user. I like the question, and I'm going to let Debbie also respond to this. I think one of the things that came out in the slides that Debbie presented is people do things just don't happen by themselves. And so even when you're looking organizationally across the world at how do you change the culture, how do you change the way people are thinking about this, it's about finding the 1 or 2 mavericks who exist. Maverick, like someone who's a little bit crazy, but also switched on. Like how do you identify that person? Because they're going to be the person on the ground when you leave who's actually going to make stuff happen. And so, just an example from this trip, we had the director of the National Research Foundation, which is a government-funded organization in Seoul, in Korea. They have several billions US dollars that they're investing into big research, big tech projects. And he came and visited us at Google X, and we were talking to him about how failure is really important, how it's important to give people the safety to know that it's okay to not succeed. because otherwise you end up in these situations where people are just trying to make something work that will never work, and then you waste years and years of time with a suboptimal solution. And you could tell he really was kind of worried about the answer we had given him, the discussion that was happening. We went there on Monday, and he presented a video to us. It was all about how the NRF wants to embrace failure. And we thought that was amazing, like in the space of 2 or 3 weeks, like he had managed to bring people around this idea of this is the type of environment we need to create. I think the other thing that's interesting is this idea of people who actually live through the problems themselves are the best people to solve them. Wherever we go in the world, where a solution is exported in, where some, scientist, genius in the world thinks they can solve a local problem, oftentimes they're not successful. And so if you can find the people on the ground who are living through it, it really makes so much of a difference in terms of how successful that deployment is going to be.
Yeah, sure. So I would add 2 things. One is I think that collaboration and exposure is so important. I think there's a Chinese idiom around being a frog in a well. And what we're really trying to do is bring people out of that. And I think that does a few things. So one is we want everyone to be inspired by the amazing things that other people are working on, right? And 2 is I think it's that collaboration that allows people to tackle these big problems. Some of these problems are so big that it's close to impossible to do it yourself. And so I think that collaboration and exposure is really important. And the second one is about incentives. And Puneet talked about this a lot. How can we create the right incentives for people to be more long-term minded, for example, and to actually want to tackle these big problems? So for example, in academia, I know there's a lot of emphasis, for example, on getting grants and on publications. And that's great, right? But how can we also give people the option of not just working on short-term projects that might get them short-term recognition, but tackling these big problems that might take a few more years, but will ultimately be so much more rewarding for them? How can we give people the incentive to look on the long-term horizon and to think about working on projects as opposed to just publicizing or publications, right? So I think it's a combination of those two. It's about collaboration and also creating that environment where people are incentivized and not afraid.
I just had another thought as well I wanted to share with you. A lot of people ask us, why do we do this? Like, are we going to take a stake in somebody's project? Are we going to make money off of it? Are we going to steal their idea? Are we like these evil people who are just like masquerading under the disguise of this? And the answer is no. And for us, this is a long-term bet, because it's actually really hard for us to work on these projects ourselves. It's really hard for the self-driving car to be scaled across not just the US, but the rest of the world. And because a lot of it requires society to embrace taking a bet on doing something different. Everybody's really entrenched in old habits, and to get them to adopt something new that might be unfamiliar is actually really difficult. So the more that we can take these baby steps in the right direction of people thinking, there's this amazing phrase that I heard, and it's very pertinent in the Valley, in the Bay Area, where they say we have all these big minds chasing small ideas. It's the shame. What if we could change that a little bit?
Hi, I'm Jitesh. I'm a research student of technology and entrepreneurship at UST. Well, first of all, I thank Google for working on this great platform. My question is, at what level of progress or stage in development are we expected to be at for the project to be considered a moonshot? Like, what should we have?
So there some kind of proof of concept that your idea is actually possible. So we don't have any bias towards you have to be a postgrad, you have to have worked for this many years, you have to be this kind of profile. The idea can come from anywhere in any place, but there needs to be enough scientific rigor, enough technical rigor, a prototype, a proof of concept for us to believe that the physics makes sense, the math adds up, the science is legitimate. The biggest risk for us is promoting or being associated with something that turns out to be pseudoscience. So there has to be enough that work that you've done for us to be able to come in at that stage and then help you move even faster. if you have an initial idea, that's great. I think we're also trying to build up this community, and as we revamp, we're updating this website to make it much more interactive. So there's this virtual meeting place for these minds to come together. Take your time to get to that point, and it might take several iterations before it's at a level where we feel like, yes, that makes sense to put you in front of Larry or Sergey or Costa or the equivalent in Asia or Africa where the technology might be most relevant.
Thank you.
Are there any girls who want to ask questions? I haven't heard from any yet.
I have a question. Can I ask you, what about the intellectual property rights of the people who submit the ideas on the platform? Does Google X protect those rights, and how?
So our advice to people when they're putting together their presentations, the 10-minute format is actually really important. People tend to take a long time to explain what they're working on, and oftentimes at the end of it, you don't know what they've said. So getting people into this format of why are you doing it? How are you doing it? And what are the technical details to make me believe that what you're saying is actually true is a really simple, concise way to get the message across. The fact that it's 10 minutes also means that you don't need to reveal anything you don't want to. So we don't want to put anyone in a position where they feel uncomfortable about sharing something that may not have a patent or may not be protected in a way that they feel comfortable about. Having said that, a lot of these projects, for example, the nuclear molten salt reactor design, she has the patent on the design, but she's also 10 years ahead of anybody else who might be in the market. So it would take somebody that much longer to catch up to her in order to do what it is that she's doing. So because these projects are so complex, take so much deep, specialized knowledge, we tend to find that it's not as big of an issue as people might think it is. We also want to help, if there are people who are going through a patent review process or they're needing that kind of level of support, and it's a project that we believe in, and perhaps there are ways in which we can help that process along. Come on, I want to hear from a woman in the room. Can I ask you guys a question? And you guys can answer if you feel like it. Do you guys think this would actually be relevant or helpful to some of the stuff that you would like to do in the future? And do you feel like this is a good outlet to do it, or are there others that you would prefer to use?
Women in the very back, and the black with the glasses.
Am I the one? Thank you for pointing at me. This is Diana from the School of Engineering, and I work on external relations. I'll be more than happy to work with you in promotion and any other collaborative initiatives to make it a big success. And can I pass a mic to the lady next to me who may have comments?
I'm sorry, I just coming, so I didn't cover the whole lecture. May I give mic to student next to me? Thank you.
No, this one.
My name is Victor. I'm an alumni, and I would like to ask a question. Is so far the Software X, how many significant projects that you would like to share with us? For example, name field, for example, Google Glass or other equivalent thing, and you would like to share with us. Thank you. So far, up until now, SoftwareX, is there any significant projects?
Significant projects.
Yeah, with significant
Yeah,
progress.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
interested in that.
There are. So one of the ones that you heard that was featured in that 2-minute video was the design of the molten salt reactor. And so the concept here is that traditional nuclear reactors suffer from the risk of a meltdown. And this new design of this reactor makes that redundant. It's not actually possible for this reactor to suffer from the same kind of situation that we saw in Fukushima or Chernobyl. So the safety concerns around nuclear suddenly disappear because they don't exist in that kind of way. What's also really nice about this project is that it uses waste nuclear fuel as the fuel source. And there's enough buried around the world everywhere to power the Earth for 72 years. She's got the design, she's got the money, and she's also got interested parties outside of the US. She's trying to scale first in the US because that's where her home is. But we've had interest from both France. We were in China yesterday. China, there's a company there that's very interested in taking this technology and actually deploying it. I know Korea is very interested in nuclear as well. So just from our conversations, we're starting to see some interesting interest in this project. There's another guy who is working in Tel Aviv, and this was also featured, where he's created these nanorobots using DNA origami. And they have the computational power to go to a particular site within the body and perform a number of functions. So you can imagine, as you would do in a computer program, you can program certain functions into a machine. That's what he's basically done with these robots. And so they can learn from each other, they can talk to each other, and in aggregate, in this like inside the system, they can cut a tissue out. So you can imagine a cancerous tumor in the body. They can cut it out, move it to a place in the body where it can be destroyed, and then get it out of the body. They're actually working in a rabbit model right now. He told me a fascinating story where they were performing a test, and so they injected this rabbit with a drop of saline. Within 6 minutes, the rabbit split in half. So, I mean, it's really incredible how far the progress has already been made in a lot of these different areas. I would say that in some ways, the projects that we come across in SoftwareX sound even more surreal and crazy than the Google projects. And I think they have a lot of potential to do some amazing good. So we have a requirement for all of our events that we do. The video you saw was from an annual conference that we do with our founders and chairman. And then since then, we've done several smaller 2-hour workshops all over the place. A requirement for the event to take place and be a SoftwareX event is at least one of the 3 speakers has to be a female. Otherwise, it's not a SoftwareX event. So we hold ourselves to that standard very, very tightly. Which means that at least a third of everything you see up there is from women, and we're trying to make that 50-50.
Okay, if someone has some kind of idea, where can we submit these ideas for review?
So I think the dean said we're going to work through our process.
So I guess the idea is for us actually at HKUST, we're gonna. I mean, there's the option. I guess if I understand, you can go straight to Google, right? And so on. But I think what we're trying to do is to have a platform for you to, as individuals, to submit. It's not like HKUST, like you're individual, right? Yeah. And we're going to have a platform. We're going to try to come up with a platform that will facilitate such submission and somehow perhaps even work with you to make it better and so on. At this stage, initially we're thinking even to think of a competition that for HKUST that through that competition, we're going to do some screening. We may even have Google involved with that. It could be a joint event, and then we can have it with the short list of maybe 3 or 4 that will be submitted to Google, and that will be kind of some type of a screening short list and so on, so that somehow maybe Google is working with us. Instead of for them to have 1,000 submission, hopefully they're going to have actually from us what we believe are the best 5 or so. That's what we have in mind at this stage. But please, if you have any suggestion, let us know.
Yes, I just like you to explain a bit more. You mentioned in your organization your resources to help students or anyone interested in submission to be able to tell a great story. Of course, the school and our platform will do that as well. But locally, what type of resources may be available to assist the university in this effort? So, for example, if the responsibility was fully on the staff or the say or some of the clubs and the faculty to coach the students on how to tell a great story, because that's half the battle, as you mentioned, right? And it does take time and effort, and also experiences in how to coach people to tell a great story. So I just want to know more about the resources available.
Yeah, so what we try to do, Google is a global company, as you know. In the process of coaching, it starts to become like there are certain things that you can identify that are commonalities that people might struggle with. So what we tend to do with our organizers who are looking to coach some of these speakers is to work with them for the first several sessions. And so we would do that over video conference, over Google Hangout, where we would have members of our team sitting and listening, giving advice, and doing that in collaboration with the staff here, so that they can hear from us until it sounds like a broken record, the things that we're saying. And when it gets to a point where it's like, okay, well, we've done 4, 5, 6 of these, then maybe it'll be a little bit easier to pass on the same best practices. But it's always good to see it in context. It'd be easy for us to give you a top 10, but when you can actually see it being applied to a particular example, and sort of like the subtleties come out, we find that's probably a better way around it.
Yes, you mentioned about this Google Hangout. Is this an organizational or a team behind in Mountain View or what?
Yeah, so Google.
But what about the people behind it?
It's the SoftwareX, so it's all of the Google X network. So SoftwareX is within Google X. Within Google X, we have all of our hardware researchers, everyone from any type of field you could imagine. So we usually bring a subject matter expert into that room, and then a generalist. You saw Rich Duvall there. He's also sitting in on a lot of these conversations to help push them forward.
Hi, my name is Po Chi, and I teach innovation and entrepreneurship here at the university. In addition to the fear of failure issue, the story issue aspect is very important. I think many of our students don't understand how to do that very effectively. But there's another step that's kind of before, in my mind, and I just kind of want to ask you if you've thought about this, which is particularly for an audience like this. I don't mean necessarily our students, HKUST students, but sort of Greater China. Many students are not trained to know how to ask the right kinds of questions. Right? It's not just sort of critical thinking, and it's certainly not just science fiction kind of dreaming thinking. There's a certain skill that's required and experience to know how to ask questions that lead you down the path. Is this something that you do? Can you organize events like this? Is this something that you would support?
Yeah, so we actually have an effort around this called 10x thinking, and it's almost like the initial stage to encourage people to ask the right questions and also to think in a bigger picture perspective. So instead of thinking 10%, how do you do something that's much more disruptive? So that is a sort of like a design process type of workshop where people are encouraged to solve interesting problems and sort of challenged to have that larger perspective. So that is something that we can pass on and encourage to happen if it feels like that would be a better first step. The other answer to that is we're moving right now. If you look at the website, similar to TED and other video portals, you're only getting time capsules of, this is 10 minutes of me up on stage. You don't know what I've done before this. You don't know what I've done after this. You don't know if I'm still working on the project. What we're moving to on the website is a situation where you see much more of a portfolio, where you can see an aggregate of this is all of the progress that has been made to date. These are the diagrams, these are the PDFs, these are the videos that you can watch, so you can see the process. These are the challenges that we face today, and this is the roadmap for where we're trying to go. Having several hundred examples of that for someone to go through and try and understand that process, we think is a much more effective way for them to pick it up. And it's something that we're actively working towards, and we've got developer resources to build that out as a product.
Thank you.
There was also this girl here who we can go after.
Right, okay, so I have two questions. The first thing is, as Coletta said, this partnership is more like a platform that allows students as individuals, they will be able to enter into this competition or whatever platform that allowed us to select some of the projects to be put into this Software X, right? Do you see that actually, for example, UST is playing a role more like a hub in this region, so that in fact we are open even for individuals outside this community, for example in Hong Kong, then we simply serve that purpose. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that among all the projects that you said about like 200s in this category, they're ongoing. What would be the plan, for example, in terms of assessment of the progress? Under what situation some of the project they would eventually be shelved, or how project would evolve? Is it basically based on natural selection, and when people lost the interest, then they die? So two questions.
The first question, we'd absolutely love that. And that's, we don't come in with a heavy hand and say, you must do this for us. We like to hope that people fall in love with the idea as much as we do and choose to embrace it and be the focal point for other ideas and other people to filter through. We were actually at Ping An yesterday, and they spoke so highly of HKUST as a partner that they work with and who they believe in as a real leader in science and tech progress. And I think, it's not just limited to students, as we see here. There are alumni here, there are faculty members here who are working on incredible things that we met with the last time we were here in March. So I think, yes, absolutely, you guys have your own network and your own reach that's outside of this room that we would love to tap into and try and support and help. On your second question, I think on the website, yes, it is a natural selection process. The ideas that are making the most progress, that are generating the most interest, are obviously going to be the ones who are featured and who are given that little bit extra because they're really getting somewhere. That's not to say that we actually actively go in and say, well, you can't be part of this anymore. So I think it's really down to the founder. The best founders are the ones who push something through and make it happen. And we believe in the people behind all of this work. So we want to help them as much as they can as they continue to face different challenges in their life cycle.
And I'll just add to the partnerships piece. You mentioned, what if HKUST were to become a hub for tech innovation in Hong Kong or in China or in all of Asia? And I would say to that, what we really want to empower our partners to creatively make of this partnership what they will. We want to empower HKUST, if that is your vision, to become the hub for tech innovation. And so however we can help that, it's part of the conversation we want to have with you.
There's a girl there who had a question.
Yeah, thank you for your attention. My name is Sherry. I was really interested in your in the project you shown today. But since all of you come from School of Engineering and I come from business school, I feel kind of uncomfortable here. So my question is, whether the projects you shown today need some kind of business talent, or can I do a part in it? I'm really interested in the project.
Well, thank you so much for coming. We're so lucky to have you here with us. I hope that you come back to more engineering events and you'll feel more and more comfortable. It's really important that we don't sit in our separate groups. That's not how the real world looks, and when the real world looks like that, it causes problems. So the more that we mix it up and we have people from different backgrounds, disciplines, perspectives, sitting together, working together, pushing ideas forward, the more successful they're going to be. And that's how Google X looks. There are plenty of business people at Google X, so you wouldn't be out of place there. I think with regards to your question, it's definitely something that we're spending a lot of time to move towards. As I mentioned, we are redeveloping our website to be much more of a platform, an interactive place where people can actively contribute. Doesn't matter who they are, where they are. And I think that would be an excellent starting point for you, for if there is a project where people have identified, they know the science and the tech inside and out, but they don't know how to make a business plan out of it. They don't know how to distribute. They don't know how to scale. That could be somewhere where you could come in and provide that leadership. So please, we'll send an update once we get to that stage, but I think the time frame we're looking at is within the next few weeks. And thank you for asking the question.
Hello, is it okay? Now, and this is Tim from School of Engineering. And from here, I learned from that one that you are trying to think about the huge problem and then looking for some kind of the people innovated together and find some solution later on. So meanwhile, in our school, we're also doing some community projects using engineering knowledge from the local community. We start some of them. Is it feasible that we bottom up to try to work with you to become a global project for solving the problem? Is it? Do you also accept some kinds of the existing projects, or maybe some maybe need to modify, because each country and each area have to do localization for this one. So is it feasible to expand this one from the existing projects to the others international one, or maybe global one?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the way to think about sort of how that process would work is we continue to expand the number of Software X events that we're doing outside of the US to have more local events where people, we want to feature local tech pioneers who are working on solutions relevant for their own communities. And I think by having these different stages where, let's say we did an event at HKUST, after we select the best out of this competition, they come and they present their ideas. In that forum, I think the focus should be, how would you globalize this idea? How would it be something that could be picked up by someone in Latin America or South America who has a similar type of scenario, but maybe a different context that we could apply this to? And the idea in recording these proposals is that you doing it here, you're limited to whatever audience is in the room. But if we can get that 10-minute proposal from you, we can then share it with the rest of the network, progress it forward, and invite you to come and speak to a more global audience at a different venue. So having these stages where maybe you start here at HKUST, maybe then we invite you to come and to speak at an event either in Europe or in the US with our network of people who can help you to have that more international leverage.
Yeah, hello. My name is Taylor from Department of Finance. I'm also coming from business school. I have two questions.
You're not alone.
Yeah, hi, buddy. I have two questions. My first question is about the kind of the project that could be qualified as one of the Software X idea. What if my project is about an initial business idea, but not involving a new breakthrough technology development, but instead of using the leverage of the existing technology? Let's make a random example, like by using the image recognition of the Google Glasses to measure the movement of your muscular on your face, and then you can know about the mood of the people, and it may help the people or help the kid to understand how they feel or how their mood changing. this is just a random idea, but my point is, will Google accept an idea of project in not involving a new breakthrough technology, but leverage the existing technology into benefit the millions of people and billions of people?
So I think one of the people here had a similar question earlier, and the answer is yes. We are willing to look at examples where it's a reapplication of an existing technology. I think really what's going to make the difference is how much impact the idea has. So how many, for how many millions, billions of people does it impact, and how much of an impact does it have in their lives? Is it really going to make such a huge difference to their day-to-day? And if it does, then absolutely it's something that we want to know about and help and support.
And my second question is, how do you quantify the impact of a project? You have to make a criteria to assess the project, right?
Yeah, so a lot of this comes across, it's not us having to go and do another round of how do we quantify it, it's how well the problem is articulated. So in terms of a lot of the projects, I told you 1 in 19 people are diabetic across the planet. That number is rising. You can look at the rates of increase all over the world. It's a real problem. And you can look at how many times a day they have to prick themselves. And this is only like a baby step in a direction of how do you help these people to have the monitoring that they need, and also the automation of having to supply themselves with insulin. So having those statistics, having those numbers as a part of the proposal is really important, and something that we look for in the different submissions that come through.
But what if the statistic not existing yet? I mean, not any school that has done any research before. So
That's
how
the
can
first step.
the first step?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Steven, and I'm here to sit for my friend who is from business school. And actually, I just have a simple question. It could be a suggestion, actually. If there is a redundancy on the idea or some issue that the people have, would you put them together to have a deeper cultivation on the issue or the idea they have?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what's interesting there is people may take a slightly different path to approach a similar, the same problem, right? So that one might be coming from this perspective, one from another perspective. Oftentimes there are subtle differences that will cause one to be more successful and the other one less so. And if there are ways that we can take the best of both and try and push them forward, we definitely try and help to facilitate that communication and collaboration as much as possible. If nothing else, for the awareness that these are the different things that are happening. And I think also deployment. You will see some deployment strategies work better than others, depending on how the intricacies of the technology that's actually being used. So I think we're not at a stage where we can call out which of, let's say, half a dozen are the best ways to get to the problem, particularly when they're all very similar. But by seeing how they play out over time and trying to allow for that collaboration to happen, I think the chances that they will achieve success are much greater.
One more question.
Right, we can take one last question. Just about.
Go ahead. Last question.
So, is there any platform for people to exchange ideas which might come across some kind of property right problems?
So we caution everyone to only do what they feel comfortable in sharing. So they have to have a certain comfort level of who they're. We ask people to only reveal what it is that they are happy to be in the public domain.
A quick comment. I think the dean can probably speak more to this, but we do want to encourage collaboration between, for example, business students and technical students. So your question earlier about just repurposing existing technology for a new radical solution, I think we'd really encourage you to work with the person who's working on that technology, right? So that collaboration is really important. And I was just informed that we're out of time, so thank you guys so much for your questions. Did you want to close?
We're here we'd love to get to know all of you and understand what it is that you think we could help you with. So please do stay in touch with us. This is a relationship which is two-way. So let us know what we could do better and what we could do more of. Thank you.